What's going on, everybody? You've got JT here, we've got David over at Crypto for Change, we've got C Will with the Passive Income Network, and we have a terrific guest joining us today. We have got Kevin Basham over at the Cryptopulse podcast, which is available actually on Spotify and Apple Music, and has over 250,000 listeners in over 120 countries. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show today, Kevin.
Thank you so much for inviting me, guys. It's we were just saying off air how cool it is that I can come on someone else's show. So this is going to be way more relaxed for me than usual.
Hey, welcome, Kevin.
Yes, it's absolutely
thanks,
fantastic. And for anybody joining the show live, let us know in the comments if you have any questions or discussion topics that you want us to touch on. We'll certainly be keeping an eye on those chats throughout the show today. But let's just start off with a quick introduction. Let our audience know, Kevin, who you are and how you started the Pulse podcast.
Yeah, I'll try and give you guys a short version of it because there is quite a story behind it.
Let's say, okay.
So Ben is my business partner and co-host. So we started Cryptopulse in 2017 in November, and he'd been in the space for a little bit longer than me, but we were both quite new to it. So the idea of setting up a podcast was really to help us understand more about the space. Because I bought my first crypto in something like July 2017. I bought Litecoin, and I think it was like right near the start of when Litecoin came out. And as soon as I started reading about blockchain and Bitcoin and what it was, I was like, holy shit, this thing's got some potential. So we started the podcast with no idea on how to do a podcast, no listeners, no real knowledge about crypto or blockchain. Didn't even know Web3 was going to be a thing. And here we are today with that many listeners, and we've interviewed hundreds of different guests from all over the globe. We're primarily an audio podcast, which is on Spotify and Apple and all major podcasting platforms. But really kind of before that and currently, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business founder. So I founded some companies in different sectors, from recycling and sustainability through to marketing and tech. So I've got quite a diverse background.
Well, shout out to you.
Yeah, thanks. Terrific. I appreciate that answer. We first came into contact with each other, all three of us really, from a post you made about Algorand. And it seemed like, you don't know too much about Algorand, but you did recently do a podcast about the love chain, and we spoke about this a little bit before the show. Could you expand on, maybe what you do know about Algorand and how you found the love chain?
Yeah, sure. So Algorand I know of as a project. I don't know a huge amount about the platform itself. So I was really interested to talk to you guys today about why you're doing a show focused around one particular blockchain solution, which I think is quite interesting. And there must be some good stuff going on there. The community on Twitter for it is pretty wild, which gets me really interested, because I think that a lot of these projects and blockchains are as strong as their community. And yeah, you're right. We had Adam and Omar from the Love Chain on, which was really interesting. But I'm also aware of some other projects such as Oculus. So we know Lee Parsons has built that. And it seems to be like the blockchain of choice for many, many people at the moment. And I've only heard good things, which isn't always the case in the space, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, I feel like, even JT kind of got this question from the CEO of the Algorand Foundation, that, he was doing an interview with her, and she was kind of blown away that, she gets how maybe investors or people, especially developers and builders in Web3 really get excited about, Algorand and wanting to build on it. Obviously it's they can build a business and things like that. But, she was kind of blown away as well that there's so many specific YouTubers and people who are doing specific content for Algorand. I know for me, when I got into the scene about a year and a half ago, I was, just kind of buying, you said you bought Litecoin. I think the first one I bought was Doge, had no idea what I was doing. It was just like, crypto popped up on my trading app, and I was like, you know what, why not throw some? I definitely didn't hold like I should have. I paper handed that and missed out on a big run because I was before the big Elon Musk pump and everything. But, I think once I started really doing research, and I bought Ethereum, right? So when I bought Ethereum, it was getting really expensive to move around, and to really kind of play around on the DeFi. Obviously, that was there. And so I started looking, through articles and just through publications on like, what other solutions are out there. I kind of stumbled upon Algorand, and found, started doing research on Silvio McCauley, who actually founded it. And honestly, then just started using it, right? I started using D apps like Yieldly, that was early. Opulus was one of them. Love Chain obviously is building, and there's tons of other ones like AlgoFi now. And just the ease of use really is what got me into using it, and just being able to send crypto very fast, it being secure, final, was some of the main points. And then from there, I started a YouTube channel, right? Met some of these guys, JT and C-Will, along the way, and we kind of started this channel. But that was kind of my entry into Algorand, and like kind of what separated itself from some of the other things out there. And I'll let JT and C-Will kind of chime in on what they see, or what they saw initially. But that was kind of what got me into it.
So I'll tell you right now, my first crypto I purchased was XRP, or excuse me,
I'm sorry to hear that.
It was Bitcoin in like 17 a little bit, then XRP when I got back in the game. But yes, I'm sorry to hear that too.
Tell me, have you held it? Have you still got your XRP?
No, I ended up selling it like probably 4 months ago for some Bitcoin on the Ledger, platform. So shout out to Ledger. But yeah, then I, was looking for so my channel, Passive Income Network, is all about passive income, how to create assets that produce passive income. So I'm looking for these things, and I ran into Algorand on Coinbase talking about a 6% APY, and I was like, oh, let's see what this is. And then, as what David said, figuring out the technology. I was in early enough there was 0 apps, and then Yieldly came, which is a DeFi protocol. The first one. So then I hopped in there, and then, just figuring everything out along the way. And I made Algorand Anthem for the same community. So we'll send that to you. But that was it. So I do, before after JT, go ahead and tell his story. But I do want to know what kind of cryptos you're into.
Yeah, absolutely. And my story's a little interesting because I started my channel. It's called JT Invest in You, and it was supposed to be a general investing channel, just like general investing education and whatnot. And even my first video was titled "The Who, What, When, Where, and Why of Investing." It was just going over really the basics. And I started in the crypto journey around 2017, and had that run up, and also because I was a noob back then, I also held it for most of the way back down. So probably around 2018, 2019, I just went back to the general equities market. I've been investing in stocks since about 2014. I was like, all right, wasn't as convinced on crypto after the fall. And then 2020 or so rolled around, and it was the bull market. So I was like, maybe I'll explore some cryptos again and see what excites me, because Bitcoin interests me, and Ethereum was one that blew me away in 2017 with the concept of smart contracts and what you could do just what you could imagine could be done in such a trustless manner. But then in 2020, as I said, once I started dipping my toes back into the cryptocurrency market, I came across Algorand on Coinbase, as C-Will mentioned, basically for the same reason, because I was like, oh, 6%, let me learn more. So I decided to dive in. I found Silvio McCauley, who's a Turing Award winner. He's an absolute genius. I dug deeper into the team and found out that there's another Turing Award winner. They even have a Nobel Prize winner on the team. So the team is very stacked from an academic level. I listened to the Lex Friedman podcast with Silvio, and really from there, it was no looking back. I made my first Algorand video, and somebody from the community actually donated 30, 40 Algorand to my wallet. And that was enough incentive I needed to dive into it a little bit more, and that's kind of where the journey began.
You're like, whoa!
That's so cool, because the market is flooded with so many cryptos.
Absolutely.
And I didn't know Algorand was featured on the Lex Friedman podcast. That's mental. That is not usual.
Yep.
Right. I don't think has he had Vitalik on? I think he probably has.
I think he's had Vitalik on twice, actually.
Yeah. Right.
Michael
and that's
Saylor
about it.
That Michael Saylor bull, Bitcoin bull.
Sure.
Yeah, right.
But not many founders and creators of blockchains get on that show, right? You could say, Saylor obviously for his philosophical point of view of Bitcoin and what he's done with MicroStrategy, and you can say Vitalik obviously because Ethereum was really a first. But that's very interesting. I'll have to listen to that episode.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about it too is just like, when even because I watched that interview, like I'm sure most people, in Algorand have, if they, if you go on YouTube and you search Algorand, that's one of the top ones that pop up, I feel like. But even the whole like, Vitalik Buterin with the trilemma, right? So that's something that he coined that, in the cryptocurrency space, you can't have all three, right? Scalability, decentralization, and security. And that's where Silvio Macaulay has solved that with Algorand. And we didn't really get to talk about this much with our last guest, Mark Yusko. He's a big Bitcoiner. But with the pure proof of stake, that is what honestly really attracted me to Algorand, mainly because I come from a banking background, right? I was in banking for 8 years. So I know not only just the trouble of getting a bank account set up, right, and just sending money, but I also know how many fees are tacked onto so many transactions worldwide, right? And that alone right there is enough to knock so many people out of even having a bank account, being able to grow financially. And so with Algorand's pure proof of stake and just how it's the entry level for Algorand was so low, with the fees being so low because of the not being as using much computational power as something like Ethereum, it really just opened the floor for anyone and everyone to be able to access the network, right? Anyone can run one of the participation nodes, and if you hold algos, you're able to participate in consensus, right? And whereas some of the other ones, like Cardano with delegated proof of stake, or even Ethereum with its move to proof of stake, you have to own, what is it, like 32 ETH, right?
100,000. It's
Well,
100,000
not with the
USD.
current prices, but at one point it was, it was that expensive if you were trying to be that, or you have to pull your
32
funds
ETH, I
together
think.
Yeah.
Right.
32 ETH.
So I think it's just the more like the philosophy and the ideals behind Algorand that really got me into it, because as someone who wants to see financial inclusion, right, and anyone be able to access loans and access financing and access money to start a business, right, not just here in the U.S. but also globally. That's something that really hits with me. And with some of the layer ones that are out there, Ethereum being one of them. I mean, someone who's wealthy in America, sure, you could play around on DeFi. You could send, $100 and pay a $20 fee, and it might not hurt you. But let's be honest, in the majority of the world, that's not the case, right? People need access to financial tools that, the levels, the barrier to entry is low, right? And so that's another huge thing. But I do kind of want to get here, JT, and see, well, what are your all's thoughts there as we talk a little bit about, the consensus. What to you differentiates Algorand from some of what we see out there in the layer one landscape?
Well, quickly, because I do want to hear more thoughts from Kevin about these things. But I was using the Cosmos ecosystem, right? And they have a delegated proof of stake. So similar like what Ethereum is trying to merge to. You take your coins and you send them off to a validator, and then there's 120 validators or something of that nature, and they're using the creating the new blocks. The pure proof of stake is a lot more. It's a lot better, and it's more easier access for everybody to participate. You can have one algo, then they have a randomization through the algorithm to take 1,000 different wallets or coins and then use those to validate. And since the transactions are so fast and so random that no one can truly track it and be able to hack it like you could with Ethereum or something. So basically, it's an overall, it's more fair, basically. It's more fair. Well, versus a one person with one algo has an equal opportunity to be a validator in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And to expand on that, Algorand does this interesting thing, basically through the power of randomness, that, as Sewell mentioned, that one algo really does give you the chance to participate in consensus, and it does so through the power, as I said, through randomness. And Silvio Macaulay, he is known for some of his fundamental early work on public key crypto systems, pseudo-random functions, digital signatures, and even was one of the co-inventors of zero knowledge proofs. And he was kind of inadvertently mentioned in the Bitcoin white paper, because in the Bitcoin white paper, one of the pieces of information that it references was actually co-authored by Silvio, which is very interesting. So the team, it's really interesting when we think about cryptocurrencies, because you think about decentralization and whatnot, but outside of Bitcoin, every single crypto has some sort of core developer team. So ultimately, you kind of are putting your hope or faith into a team that's going to execute, the certain upgrades that need to happen and so forth. And when I look at the team, or at least the core developers around the Algorand organization, it just it's so top notch that I don't see or really understand how it is lesser known in the ecosystem currently.
I mean, yeah, Kevin, what's your what's your top cryptos? Like, what are you rocking with, and what's some protocols you into?
Okay, so I can talk about some of the projects that I like. For full transparency, I'm predominantly sitting on the sidelines at the moment. In terms of, so I'll be very transparent. I have my own crypto investment pot. Like most of the market, I thought we were going to see a better end to last year, and I thought, no. And then I thought, the spring came, and I thought it's going to get better, and then I was like, this is not looking good. So I came out into stables, and thank God I did. And I'm dollar cost averaging it into stuff that I really like the look of, that people are actually building on, because I think things are going to get a lot worse before they get better from a price point of view. Yep. But what I learned going through the last bear cycle, I think JT mentioned this earlier about like holding your bags through the bull and the bear cycle of 2017, 2018. That was me. I put a small amount in 2017. It did a 10x, and I just kept it in there because I didn't understand market cycles at the time. And now I do. I do understand them. So I just wasn't prepared to do that again. And also the things that tend to boom in one cycle don't always move through to the next. We saw things like Verge currency in 2017. And I love Verge. I love the Verge community. It's amazing. I've got some good friends there. But I don't think that's going to do the same type of thing as what Solana has done this time around, for example. I'm not a particularly big fan of Solana at all. But so I'm sat on the sidelines, but I have been dollar cost averaging in. Zilliqa is something I'm super interested in. We just had a chap. We had Kevin Mayer from Zilliqa come on the show yesterday, and that was published on our podcast today, about an hour ago. So Zilliqa is one I'm interested in. Kadena, wow! I mean, that is a hell of a project there, and they've got some very clever people in that team, and they've got some big VC backing. So I'm really looking at what I call the blue chip cryptos. I'm looking at the blockchains that developers are using and are successfully building apps and projects on, and I'm looking at the ones that are giving those development teams funding, and a lot of these are funded by traditional VCs and investment firms and like your JP Morgans of this world. So I feel a bit conflicted at times, but we've got to let these guys partake in the space because these projects need proper funding. So I'm being really risk averse, but honestly, my favorite crypto is still Bitcoin by a country mile. I mean, nothing will ever have the what's it called, the immaculate conception of Bitcoin, and there'll only ever be one. And I love proof of work. I think it's a great concept. I think proof of work is misunderstood by many people, but I still believe that is philosophically one of the best ways to secure and reward a network. So that's my point of view at the moment.
Yeah. I have an interesting question, and obviously I don't even know if I've posed this question to you, JT, or C. Will, but here's one thing I've often thought about, when I consider Bitcoin, especially with what we're seeing right now and I don't even worry too much about the energy consumption of Bitcoin mining, right? I mean, I know that there's a lot of things in the world that use way more electricity than Bitcoin mining, especially because a lot of things are looking to, use renewable energy, right? To power these, the things that are powering the computers behind it. My biggest always worry, I guess, was the fact of, if I'm someone, right, and I wanted to participate in the block or in the consensus of Bitcoin and be a part of that, it would take a considerable amount of money to be able to compete with a lot of the, massive computers that are out there. And now we're seeing even big. I mean, I saw a video yesterday of a guy, young guy, but he was on with a few other big Bitcoiners, and he was just riding on a, the little like mono wheel, right? The electric mono wheel thing all the way through his factory. And it took him like 15 to 20 seconds of going probably 10 miles an hour to get past all of the current, big machines he had built. And then there was still like another, I don't know, 100 yards maybe of empty space where more were going to be put. What do you think about the decentralization of people playing a part in the network? Because that's something with Algorand, and maybe, this podcast will do a good job in helping Algorand become part of your, the things you're looking at. But when it comes to consensus, and the barrier for entry being so low where you can hold one algo and you stand a chance at being in that. Obviously the rewarding system for running that node is vastly different, but what are your thoughts there as Bitcoin continues to grow and as this kind of race for building the biggest mega factory to mine Bitcoin?
I think the world needs a pure money, and we don't have a pure money. And I think that is the biggest problem. The fiat monetary system is just leading to so much bad behavior across the board. Yeah. And I know that you can't mine Bitcoin now if you unless you're Tesla or somebody like that, you can't do that. But you know what we need a pure money, and we need something that's a pure store of value, because the current system is immoral. And Michael Saylor talks about stored energy, but and I agree with him on this, is the fact that people work and they need somewhere to store the energy of their efforts, and the current monetary system doesn't allow people to do that. So that's why real estate's gone up so much. But real estate isn't portable. And it doesn't have all of the properties of Bitcoin. So I know there's this issue around, you could call it the centralization of mining, and you're going to have probably fewer and fewer companies mining it, and you'll probably have some of the bigger companies buying up the smaller ones, and that's going to happen. And I don't think that's ideal, but I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist in the way that I think that none of the other stuff is going on is important. I don't believe that for 1 second. So I don't think Bitcoin answers all the questions to everything, but I think it's the most important problem to solve. And I think we're away from doing that, but that's my view. But there's loads of other projects if you want to get involved in and mine and be part, create a node or something, Kadena. You could on their network, you could become a miner or a node. That's possible. So,
can you break down Kadena a little bit more if you know about it?
Yeah, I know a bit. So it's a scalable proof of work blockchain. In fact, we did an episode with their CEO and CIO a few weeks ago. So maybe I could dig out the link or give you that afterwards.
Yeah, please.
But I think people should go and check that out. And I do own some, just for full transparency. I own some of the tokens, but I really believe in what they're doing, and I like the way they come up with a fully scalable proof of work solution. So it's interesting. So check it out. I'm not going to try and butcher about how the tech works, because I will get that wrong. Not being a techie, being an entrepreneur, I generally leave the technology stuff to people that are competent at it rather than have a go. But I don't believe that there's any other proof of work blockchains out there with that scalability. So
interesting.
What you were kind of talking a lot of there just about proof of work, proof of stake. What proof of stake blockchains out there do you like, or have you looked into as far as what you see potential for in the future? Like, what's your favorite there?
Oh, my favorite. Gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I have a favorite as such. I'm just keeping an eye on what's going on. As I say, I'm sat on the sidelines at the minute, and I want to see. To some extent, I'm not too bothered about the proof of stake, proof of work for some of these blockchain solutions, because I think both are valid. But for Bitcoin, it has to be proof of work. It has to be.
Yeah.
But with some of these other things, then these other blockchains, then proof of stake may work better. There's a really cool token that I have a bit of called Veracity, VRA, which is, I think, if you know those guys. So they're doing they've got some proof of view technology, which I think is really groundbreaking, and that's one I particularly like, and we interviewed those guys on the podcast. So we just interview projects that we think we're interested in, and then people decide whether it's a good interview or not by sharing it and downloading it, and then we then decide whether we want to hold any of those tokens as a result of that conversation. So that's one in particular that I think has got a lot going for it. And there's another project that a lot of people don't know about called Telcoin, which has been one of my favorites for a while. But they're building something really amazing with global remittances using mobile phone devices, and I think that's going to be a big one. But certainly not advice. They're just things that I'm keeping an eye on. And I honestly believe if we're going to be in a bear market for a while, and the macro backdrop certainly suggests we could well be, we could be going into a depression. That's bad news for crypto prices. Really bad news. If that, and I think that's going to happen. I don't see how that can't. I'm going to be looking for the teams, the projects, the businesses that are continuing to build, continuing to onboard. And you just got to look at things like Metcalfe's law. So the more people that are in the network attract more people on the network. And they're the things that I'm looking at. And I'm never married to my bags. Like just because, if one of the projects I've mentioned, just if things don't turn out the way that I think they might, then I'll look for something else. I approach this as a pragmatist, and I think there's way too much tribalism in this space, saying this is the only blockchain, everything else is a shitcoin. Well, that's just a really closed-minded point of view, right?
Right.
So,
hey, that's how they are on Twitter, though. It's like game.
Yeah, I spend too much time on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious because
go ahead.
You brought up Bitcoin and the philosophical reasons behind proof of work. And, David made some good points on some valid concerns. So I'm curious, do you know too much about Monero or XMR? Because it's my belief that I do think we need a hard money, but I also think in a world that's transitioning more and more to the digital world and less cash, it needs to be a private money that has the same cash-like functions, but in a digital world, And a lot of people, when they hear private money, they think just like money laundering or something. But I'm envisioning parts of the world where you might want to donate to some political organization that's at odds with your government, and you don't want that transaction to be publicly available because who knows the type of actions that could be taken against you for that sort of donation. And Monero is very interesting because not only is it proof of work, but it also is ASIC resistant, which are those ASIC miners that are very expensive to operate. So I'm curious what your thoughts on Monero are, if you have any at all.
I don't have too many thoughts on Monero specifically because I don't know enough about Monero. I mean, that's been around longer than I've been in this space.
Yeah, so, I think like 2014 or 2015.
And it's got into some hot water. I know quite a bit about Verge currency, just because I know the guys there, and they did a cool thing where you basically fusticate your IP address, and they say, it's not a complete privacy coin, but it's a bit like going to an ATM and then you go and spend your cash somewhere. So I think that's an interesting solution, and it's a community-led project as well. But your point about having privacy around transactions, I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's absolutely no way that governments should be able to track everybody's spending. I know we're probably going to talk about CBDCs at some point.
Oh yeah, I was going to bring that in.
You probably will have the same similar type of view to me on that, hopefully. Otherwise, this could get quite interesting. But Bitcoin's not going to provide that full transparency, and because it's a public ledger, and in theory, you can trace all of that back. Because there's people that have done that, haven't there? There's been people that have actually traced back transactions to individuals. So. So that's something to think about, but I don't think that should change because I think Bitcoin is really the digital gold, and then if people want to use privacy coins, then they should be able to do that. I'm seriously concerned about CBDCs because my view is if governments want full optics on people's spending and want programmable money, I want it the other way around. So I want to see what they're spending. I want full optics on where all my taxes are going, and I don't think they'll really want that as much as we don't want the other thing to happen. So
you got me think about was it Boris Johnson with his parties and Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's so many like crazy things that could happen with CBDCs, and even like I look back to COVID and I see when the government was sending out, obviously we saw almost 50% of all U.S. dollars being printed within a 2 years, out of our whole the whole history, right? And like
Right.
something that was interesting that I know this, I don't really know if it's conspiracy, right, or like if you would say that, but like you look at it and they were sending everybody, $600 a week, right? And so I know right now there's all this talk, or there's been a lot of talk, especially in the last 5-10 years, about the minimum wage and right people not having enough, right, to live on, right? And I've always wondered, like, with the introduction of CBDCs and the government really being able to watch everything you do and have that and that information be out there, a living wage, right, where everyone's giving a certain amount of money, and then with the freezes and clawbacks and tons of things like that, that could be incorporated into those CBDCs. It really just shows how they could just take control of everything, right? I mean, and really just and it not be good for the average person. And that's where something like Bitcoin does come in, and I don't think there's anything that's going to be able to replace something like that to really save people's ability to fight against something like that, I guess you would say.
So I think what will happen is it'll be something like this, is that we're in late stage capitalism, and at some point the current system just is going to stop working to some degree. And I think the G7 countries are fully aware of this. I think the central banks are fully aware of this. So they're coming up with some measures to tackle what could be coming over the horizon. And I think it will just be really light touch at first. So we're going to have CBDCs. Rishi Sunak, our Chancellor of the Exchequer, the guy who basically looks after the government's money in the UK, has been leading on this. And I think it would be something like, if you're on income support or social credit, whatever you guys call it over there, you'll get some money put into your digital wallet. So you'll need to register. You need to do full KYC. You'll probably have to have other records on there as well. It probably won't be too onerous at the start. And then they'll say, here's some money, and you can spend it this time on this days at these stores, and this is what you can spend it on. And people will go, oh my God, this government's amazing. They've given us free money. Which doesn't make any sense if you know anything.
We saw what
about
happened
economics. Right? So free money, no, it's just more tax, and you're living off the teat of the government. And you'll be able to spend it, and there'll be all of the stores owned by Amazon, BlackRock, Vanguard, etc. I will get my tin-foil hat out in a minute. I'm sorry for this. And I think it'll be light touch. Okay, so you could say, well, that solves a problem and it's needed, and you could say that is like the band-aid that's required for where I think we're going to go. And you could say, well, fair enough. The problem then is, as soon as they've got this programmable money, is how far do governments go with it? And that's the big question. It's like, it's the issue over liberty and freedom and things like free speech. And I honestly believe that government should go nowhere near like programmable money. But I think it's going to happen.
So I got something else, because it's about this regulation. You mentioned a few times that you're into stable coins, right? And we all seen what happened with UST and Terra Luna. Like, what are your views with that and its effect on CBDCs or stablecoin regulation?
So I think this is a pure guess. This is just one man's opinion. I think USDC will be the one that does that hangs around.
We got consensus on that then.
Yeah,
I think USDT is probably going to be in trouble in the long term. Maybe it just doesn't. Maybe US citizens can't use it or something. Or they've tried to attack Tether for so long, and I just think, well, what you've got Tether, and then you've got the US government, and which one's going to win that fight? I mean, that's pretty obvious to me.
Yeah.
So I think being in stables is a risk.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you've got to make some decisions about how much risk you're willing to take on things like that. Maybe the USDC actually just becomes the programmable dollar. Maybe that's what happens. So. Yeah.
I mean, even for it not to.
Yeah, even in the bill, right, that was just introduced by or the senators there, and obviously this isn't law yet. It's and it's probably going to take a long time to get through, and I'm sure there will be changes along the way. But even there, it did mention some regulation and some
Yep.
verbiage about stable coins needing to be backed by the dollar, right? So I think that's a very
100%
big
reserve. It
yeah.
says the bill requires 100% reserve, asset type, and detailed disclosure requirements for all issuers. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I feel like that's definitely a big, warning then for a lot of these algorithmic stable coins that are out there. People need to be doing their research on, are they getting ready for what's coming, right? Because the regulation's coming. We're seeing it now in the U.S. Obviously, it's going to, I know you're in the U.K., so there's different things over there that are happening. But I think that's one of the biggest things that people during this bear market can prepare for is the oncoming regulations that are going to come towards the crypto markets, right? And I also feel like that's why I do like Algorand, because I feel like they are positioning themselves in a way to pass these regulation standards. I mean, I know that it's ISO 222.
Yes.
It meets that standardization. Although when JT asked the CEO Stacy about that, she just blew it off like, I don't really know why that matters, or I mean, I don't know if Algorand would ever be used on that level, at least from what words she said. But it is good to know that it meets that standard. It has Sharia compliance. There's a lot of compliances that it's already within that will help it grow in the greater world as these laws get tighter, right? And as the SEC and the CFC or like commodities thing, I forget the acronym there for, but as those things start,
commodities futures and exchange.
Yeah, as those things start, weighing in on the area and protecting investors, quote unquote,
Yeah, what I see is definitely at this comment. Then we said the ISO 200s, right? So you got IOTA, XDC, you got XLM, Algorand, and a whole bunch of a few other cryptos. And then what we're seeing, that regulation appears that Bitcoin is going to go with the commodities. And my fear is that if we're all technically, other than Bitcoin, we all might be holding securities. So it's like kind of holding a stock, and I'm not quite sure, what they're going to do and regulate that part.
I'll say this. I mean, I know we're still kind of talking a little bit on the topic of the bill that just got passed or brought up. It does talk about, they're going to have to pass the Howey test, which obviously when in reading it, I've heard a lot of people say that Ethereum would be seen as a commodity as well. And I'll say this, if they're going to put Ethereum in and lump that with Bitcoin and commodities, I would 100% believe that Algorand should get that same, being put in that bucket of commodities. But I don't know. There's definitely, when reading through those questions, to pass the Howey test, I think it only has to hit one of them, and it's considered a security. So that will be.
No, it has to hit all of them.
It has to hit all of them. I thought I only added one.
According to this Yahoo Finance article about that recent legislation, they call it, they hail it as this bipartisan piece of legislation. And honestly, it's my opinion that anytime anything's getting done in a bipartisan way, it's usually not good. But we'll leave the politics aside. But essentially, what we were getting at is the bill makes a clear distinction between digital assets that are securities and those that are commodities by looking at how the asset is used. And it does go further into saying, under the legislation, most cryptocurrencies are deemed commodities. This would include Bitcoin and Ether, and smaller tokens like Cardano and Solana would be considered ancillary assets and presumed to be commodities unless the use of the tokens met exclusions, blah, blah, blah. So it does seem like these smaller L1s would actually, I'm going to pull C-Will out of this for a second, but it does seem like those smaller L1 tokens still could be classified as commodities. But I will say the stablecoin regulation does have me pretty concerned, because I get that on one hand, you want to make sure that disasters like UST don't happen. But on the other hand, if you only have USDC dominating DeFi, at what point is it not DeFi anymore if it's if there's a centralized stablecoin that has freeze functions that could, if there's a big player in a DeFi organization or a big liquidity provider that all of a sudden Circle wants to cut off or freeze those USDC, what kind of effects could that have on different lending markets and so forth? So I am concerned. I do think decentralized stablecoins still have a huge place in the ecosystem, and maybe the innovations need to change. In a couple of years from now, there'll be better iterations than there are now. But I do have some concerns that these regulations are taking decentralized stablecoins out of the equation completely. This wasn't really a question, but just certainly a discussion topic anyone can run with if they want to.
So the question is like, do you believe in free markets? And you're American, so I guess you probably believe in free markets than people in the UK and the rest of Europe. And to have true free markets, you have to allow for things like the Luna and UST incident to happen.
Yeah.
It's just a very complex thing. I honestly can't see. I think DeFi is going to run into some huge problems. I mean, governments just don't like it.
Yeah.
And I just want to go back to something when you were saying about like which projects, which tokens are going to be securities and commodities. So
sure.
There's a PDF from the World Economic Forum. And it's Cryptocurrencies, a guide to getting started, the Global Future Council on Cryptocurrencies community paper, June 2021. And on let's have a look. There's a page here with some cryptos listed. So on page 17, there's some cryptos listed in this paper, and Algorand is one of them, along with Cardano, Celo, XRP, Solana, and Stellar.
Yep.
So I would wager that these businesses are probably communicating with governments, with the SEC, with WEF, and maybe if they are if they've passed the Howey test, then they'll be fine. But what if they are securities? Is that such a problem? Like, is that a big issue? Something's a security? Because stocks and shares are a security, right? So
right.
What's the big issue?
It's hard to know what would change, because I think there would just be people are concerned about the backlog effects of people that might have been issuing these securities and how many fines that they might get, or what sort of fines or just hard times that they'll come into just because they might have issued a security a year ago or 2 years ago, and will that totally affect their business? Or I just think it's not clear enough on how it would or wouldn't affect to really make a solid. Because in theory, I mean, what's the big deal? I hold stocks, so like those are securities, but it's hard to conceptualize how it would change the space.
Yeah.
NFTs potentially could be securities as well, from some things I'm researching, depending on how people are doing it. Clearly, Opolis with music royalties, Lofty AI with tokenized real estate, yes, those are securities. But some people's projects, potentially, they might be in a situation.
Yeah, and not all securities are bad. I mean, even there are some tokenized securities, as C. Will mentioned. Lofty AI is a real estate business tokenizing real estate on the Algorand blockchain. Exodus Wallet, that a lot of people use, they've tokenized their Class A, their Class A common shares, and they're trading on the securitized market on the Algorand blockchain. So there are security tokens that exist. Not all securities are bad per se. I just think it would change the entire landscape a little bit on who can issue certain tokens, and I feel like that it could stifle innovation.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, obviously we do know that the Gary Gensler, who's the head of the SEC right now, he's spoken. Obviously he's touted what Algorand can do actually in certain speeches of his at MIT, and I think him and Silvio have known each other back from their MIT days. So I think, not to say that they're gonna make sure that Algorand makes it out on the other side better, but they at least have an understanding of what's going on, and they're learning more. And I think as it all comes out and it is more clear, that will be ultimately what determines which out of these cryptos what's going to make it and what's going to be a fad and just fall away and kind of be like the internet boom back when everybody was just creating websites, right? And then obviously there was more clarity and more regulation, and then you had the Amazons, the Googles, and whatnot come through and become the powerhouses that they are. I do hope, as we talked about earlier with these, CBDCs, that that's the hope, right? That with some of these decentralized networks, is to combat this power that these governments could inflict on everybody with just having so much control. And so I do hope that people do take deeper looks into things like Algorand, and into some of the ones you mentioned, and really see the power behind a decentralized network, and especially when it comes to money, right? And we've seen the things like the dollar and what it's done, and especially recently with inflation and things like that. I mean, it cost me $50 to fill up my Prius today. I can't do that. I can't do that very much longer. So we got to figure out something, right?
Like gas, when I first I got a new car like 3 months ago, right, and it was $40 to fill up the tank, and now it's $60. So I'm like,
guys, that's cheap. I'm not going to tell you.
I just paid like $85 to fill my car, but
shit, that's a 25% increase.
What are gas prices where you're at, Kevin?
So it's £2 a litre for unleaded fuel. So that's like $2.
It's like $12 a gallon.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine was like $5 a gallon this morning when I filled up.
Most of that is tax, by the way. Here, that's the
I'm almost at 6.
Yep.
It's tax of fuel is insane.
To pose a question to you, Kevin, I'm curious. How is it in the UK? How do I don't know if you've looked into this bipartisan bill that's been talked about in the United States a lot over the last couple of days, but what is the sentiment over in the UK towards some of these regulations coming out of the United States, and what is happening in the UK regarding regulation? Because we're not up to speed on what's happening over there.
Yeah, that is such a great question. So we're actually going to be talking a bit about this bill on tomorrow's podcast we're doing. So we record on Fridays and publish on Saturdays. So I've actually got to read up on, is this the leaked information that you're talking about? So I haven't had a chance to read too much about that. I've read it. But we keep a very close eye on what's going on in the US, because you guys really drive what's happening in the rest of the world. The UK's regulation, so we have the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, and their main concern at the minute is just making sure that crypto platforms are registered and are compliant and of doing full AML and KYC and everything. But our Chancellor is absolutely fixated on becoming a crypto and blockchain hub. But the only thing that the government seems to be talking about is the digital pound, the CBDC. That's really what they're focused on doing, and there's no real talk about encouraging innovation here, particularly not that I've seen anyway. So it'll be slow here. I don't think it's going to end up being too different. I mean, the FCA are probably a little bit of a more light touch than the SEC, and we are a very business friendly country, but we're one of the financial centers of the world. So I think out of all the G7 countries, I think the UK will be steering the CBDC stuff with the US. So it's still really vague. Really vague. I don't know where this is going to end up, because there's so many different parts of this. You've got DeFi, you've got Web3, which I don't think they're too interested in that kind of stuff particularly. You've got NFTs, and they're not that interested in that. But the currency stuff, the money stuff, is where they're really driving the most conversation.
Absolutely.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And let's just because I know we are short or have limited time here, and this obviously is mainly a discussion about Algorand. So I do want to get back to Algorand as well for your viewers and listeners, so they can hear some more. Let's jump into with the last bit of time we have here, and let's talk about some of the partnerships, right, that Algorand's been able to form this year. Because like I said, Algorand really didn't start building until summer of last year. That's when the first dApps were being built on it. That's when DeFi started to explode. And really, since last summer, there's been a ton of things going on with Algorand and what they're doing. So let's talk. Each of us can say, what we're most excited about, and then also maybe, some of the platforms that we use. And I'll go ahead and start with one of them. Obviously, I think the biggest one that would all say is FIFA, right? So FIFA has partnered with Algorand, not only for the World Cup to be a sponsor. Obviously, you'll see their name, I'm sure, places on the pitch, and things like that, which will be awesome, but also at a technical partnership, right? So they'll be able to create wallets on the Algorand blockchain. It's still, all the details have not come out on this technical partnership, but it opens the door for NFTs for the World Cup to be created, minted on the Algorand blockchain. And FIFA obviously is an organization. I don't know the exact number, but I think, last World Cup, there was at one point over 1 billion people tuning in, right, for to watch those games. And so not only will that, I think, bolster Algorand's exposure to people who are new to crypto and are new to blockchain technology, but I think it's going to help the network effect as people who maybe, they don't want to get in with creating the wallets and memorizing the seed, the passwords and all the confusing jargon that we use. They're just going to see maybe the little square that, can't think of what it's called right now. It's blowing through my mind, but they'll just be able to scan a QR code. There we go. And, set up a wallet, buy an NFT or buy their ticket, right, for a seat at a World Cup game. And maybe that'll be their introduction into this, Web3 blockchain space. So I think that is one of the big partnerships that I'm most excited about to see, especially with the World Cup being, this November. And also that was why Algorand had to get Sharia compliant, I think, was to be able to, do work in that area of the world. And so that's a huge partnership. JTC, Will, what do you guys think as far as Algorand partnerships and what they're doing?
I'll quickly add governments, right? So Marshall Islands, Algorand, this is an early one, but CBDCs, they're helping the Marshall Islands, a small country, develop and use CBDCs, right? Then we have their connection with El Salvador. And we know Bitcoin's a legal tender there, the US dollar, and Algorand, they're using, I'm not too clear and sure how they're using it, but it's on their underlying infrastructure with, I believe, Koi banks, right? And then the third biggest one is their just recent announcement with Nigerian government. So we got, 200, there we go, 200 million Nigerian people that potentially is going to need a digital wallet. So it's another company, I think it was Developing Africa, Koi Banks and Algorand's, Developing Africa. Those three are working on intellectual property and, I believe, remittances, payments, and then they're building a national wallet for Nigeria. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, it's certainly a big deal, and somebody in the comment section is actually right. I spoke to Paul Regal, the chief product officer, chief product officer of Algorand, and he did mention that Marshall Islands did kind of give up on their CBDC experiment.
Shout out to them anyway for trying.
Which I'm totally cool. I'm totally cool with that, honestly. But your point about Koi banks in El Salvador as well as Nigeria is big. I think the Nigeria one is a bit overlooked, but outside of governments, I like the real world use cases. I'm a real estate agent outside of what I do here, and Lofty AI is probably one of my favorite apps on Algorand. I partially own like 21 different properties through their site, and it's pretty fantastic. But the other area that I think Algorand is going to shine is in the creator economy. They've been putting a lot of effort to bolster their creator economy, whether it be apps that like Opulus or Dequency, which is a music synchronization licensing business that's building on Algorand that actually got funding from Kimball Musk in their recent round as one of their funders, as well as all sorts of various projects like Napster that is launching on Algorand now, LimeWire that's making a comeback on Algorand. So they're making this very concerted effort to create a home for the creator economy. We even have Pop and Puffins that made the transition over from the Luna blockchain over to Algorand through some very solid reach out to help Luna projects migrate over to Algorand. So they're making a very solid and concerted effort to build the creator economy, and I do think that'll help them shine in the future.
Like definitely.
And also, I'll just go ahead and note, with as far as when Silvio obviously created Algorand, he wanted something that is something that could evolve, right, with the growing needs of a blockchain. And they just obviously are right now, as we're filming, they're in at Austin, Texas, at Consensus for Consensus 2022, and they did give some of the updates that are how it's going to be improving right now. Algorand can handle about 1,000 transactions per second, and right now the finality, which I think this metric gets overlooked on so many blockchains, right now is 4.5 seconds, right? So if I send something or a transaction happens in 4.5 seconds, it's final. It can't be forked, right? That's a big one. So there is no competing chains to know if your transaction's actually final. Once it's on the chain or on the ledger, it's there. You don't have to worry about that being reversed. And with that, that'll be going down at the first stage to 4 seconds soon, obviously in progression going down to 2.5, which in my mind is just that's mind blowing, right? That you'll be able to transact, and have finality with 2.5 seconds, but also the TPS is going to be going up to 6,000 this summer. So that's going to be on par with, I think Visa does. Obviously, I know it can do much higher, but it's under that amount of how much it actually does on
its actual usage is like 2,000 TPS, but theoretically, I think it can do like 40 or 50,000.
Yeah,
their systems, but
right.
In their actual use case, I think Visa's doing like 15 to 2,000 TPS.
Yeah. And so, that's something I think is big. It's decent. The nodes are growing on Algorand. Right now, it's at like 2,000, I think, or 1,500 to 2,000 nodes that are currently running. And obviously, the foundation is looking at ways to make that barrier of entry easier so that the network can be more decentralized. But you're also just going to see Algorand start to take over, I think, some of the areas where other chains are lacking. Ethereum can only do a certain amount, very slow, it's very expensive. Whereas with Algorand, instant finality or near instant finality, very fast as far as transactions per speed and improving. Plus, the transaction cost is 0.001 algo, so a fraction of a penny, to any transaction. So those are just some of the technical things that I think at Consensus that they dropped information on that we're looking forward to those protocol upgrades. So a lot of exciting things happening for Algorand, and from what Stacy, the CEO of the foundation, has said, it's just getting started, right?
Facts, yeah. What I like about it again is the compliance. They're already in position with MIT, out in Singapore with the foundation. They're just in position for regulation, and I think that's very important.
See, well, I think that's such a key thing. I really do. I mean, you basically sold me on algos like tonight, which is all daytime for you. Like that's because for me, it ticks all of the boxes that I mentioned earlier about the things that I'm looking for. If I'm buying crypto at the minute, I need to know that people are going to be using this in 3 or 4 years' time.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
really, really critical and longer. I want to be a long-term value investor for these types of things. So
yeah. Oh, we didn't mention too, like 10 billion tokens, and that's at 2030, all 10 billion will be out, and we at like 6.5 billion right now. So it's going to be
they did increase the vesting, so it is almost over 2/3 of the way of all the tokens being out. So that is something I know that a lot of people who look at Bitcoin, they like the idea that it is a set amount of how many can be in circulation. So I think that is something that as the years move on will bode well for the holders and the people who are helping to decentralize and participate in consensus in the network.
I would say, Kevin, before you do go, because I know we are closing out, this is we're talking about crypto the whole time. I want to jump right back into your business mind. And can you give any advice to podcasters that, clearly we're doing crypto podcasts, but some advice of how to scale up?
Just keep doing it for loads of time.
Okay.
It's a numbers game, right?
Simple answer.
So, okay, I'll tell you some things that have gone really well for us and some things that didn't go so well. So when we started, we didn't know what we were doing. We just jumped in, which is a great thing. And we did a few episodes ourselves, and then we reached out to guests. I built an amazing network. I got invited to do talks. We got sponsors for the first season of Cryptopulse. But we were just pumping out 3 or 4 episodes a week, and we weren't discerning enough with some of the guests. And I wasn't really proud of every single episode. And so I think keeping the quality of the content high and bringing on guests that are going to add value, and also the guests that you think that are going to push the numbers up don't always do that. You know, the big guests won't always share things, which is annoying. And you know, just plug into communities that are interesting to you and engage with your audience. And just the only marketing we do is on Twitter. That's it. I don't use any other platform. Oh, LinkedIn, because we interview like CEOs of exchanges and stuff like that, and they use LinkedIn a lot. And and do you guys monetize this at all?
Yeah.
Through YouTube,
through YouTube. We are working on like some sponsorships and things of that nature. So of course, you're always welcome to sponsor.
Reach out if you want to sponsor. But we're doing the monetization route currently. But of course, you know, in the early stages, it's like, you know, maybe $2 or $3 an episode. It's not anything too extravagant.
No, I get it. So every penny that we ever made of the podcast, we just reinvested back in. You know, then
Absolutely.
we got a producer, and you know, we've got a few businesses, so we don't rely on the podcast as an income as such. But we just kept reinvesting and just upskilling, and we just kept going. And it's like anything, the market decides whether it is any good or not.
Right.
You know, that's the thing. You know, great guests make great podcasts and great YouTube videos. If they're poor guests and they're just really not engaged or interested in being there, you know, but you guys are all really charismatic and you know so much and you've all got different backgrounds. So, I mean, like even just with the three of you doing this, I think I would listen to it for sure. Like, I'm going to subscribe. I haven't subscribed. I'm going to do that now. So.
Well, I know I can speak from the comments that we've got. You know, everybody's enjoyed having you on the show, Kevin.
Yes.
And obviously, I want to say thank you for coming on. Is there any other things you guys want to mention, you know, right before we go out here, either on Algorand or Kevin, do you have any questions or comments you want to throw out?
I've got one question for you, and if anyone wants to leave something in the comments, I can't see the comments here for some reason, but so we're going to have Algorand on our podcast. We're just being lined up with somebody from their organization. It's probably going to be a few weeks' time, but I've learned a lot, but I want to be asking them some questions, and I want to ask some questions that nobody else has asked. So what should we ask them, do you think? What would be interesting?
It really depends upon who you get from the team.
That's true.
I want to say if you're talking with Kelly, there's a very good chance. You know, Stacy is pretty public. You know, she's pretty out there. It could be Stacy, who's Stacy Warden.
Kelly,
Stacy. Well, I don't know. I don't know if Kelly really does much on the podcasting, but I know Stacy would be a name. I'm trying to think of a question though. JT, you seem like you might have one.
Well, actually, this one's a tough one for me because I did just have Stacy on the podcast, so I ran through like every question I could think of that I wanted to ask her. But yeah, to David's point, it really does depend on who you want. If you have somebody on more on the technical side, you could get into the nitty gritty on the information of the actual like specs of the blockchain. If you have somebody from marketing, you could get, you know, it really depends on the perspective. I will say on like just a funny question. If you end up getting Silvio, just ask if he wants to come on our show next.
I was about to say
we did ask the question. Our producer's quite persistent, so if we do, that would be great.
He's a brilliant mind.
Silvio's brilliant. I would love to have him on the show. If anyone out there in the audience has the contact, I've got contacts at the foundation, but I've yet to make my way up to Silvio.
But I would say, Kevin, let's definitely, if you can, for me, ask about something about governments and regulation. That's what I'm really into. Because that always, like you said before, gives a more clear picture. Because, you know, the UST, we would say, got attacked because it was trying to compete against banking systems. And we know that's a bad idea to compete against the big banks, you know. So that's how I'm seeing it. Like, please ask some government crypto regulation questions.
Some regulatory stuff. Yeah, okay. We'll do that. We've got a Telegram group, so I'll let you know in there who we've got.
Excellent.
And and so what we'll do is we'll just share this across our channels as well, and you know, we'll make sure that our listenership knows about it. I think what we'll probably do, if it's okay, is to take some of the audio from this, and our producer will put some snippets into maybe one of our weekly shows with a call to action to go over and follow you guys and you know, tune in.
Yeah, we'd love that. We could send you over the audio file once we're done here tonight. You know, let our audience know where they can find you and where they can listen to the Cryptopulse podcast.
Yeah, so it's crypto_pulse on Twitter. You can then link to Ben and mine's Twitter from there. That's in the bio. And then you do Cryptopulse in the search box on Spotify is the main platform that we get listened to, or iTunes or Stitcher. Cryptopulse, all one word. And we're there, and we've got hundreds of episodes that you can listen to, including our latest one that came out today with Kevin Mayer from Zilliqa, which is actually a really good one. So yeah, go and subscribe to that and let us know what you think. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
awesome.
Nice. I did think of actually one thing you could say to whoever you do get to interview. And you could just tell them that you enjoyed the next block so much. You really want to hear them out in Dubai in 2022.
Oh yeah, we didn't even get to that. The annual Algorand conference, actually, they decided to do it in Dubai this year, which is a very interesting decision to do in a bear market, in my humble opinion. But that's a conversation for another day, Kevin. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yes. Nice to meet you, Kevin.
Likewise, stay in touch. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's always an honor to be a guest on someone else's show. I hope anyone who's listened to all of this has really enjoyed it. And yeah, let's connect again soon.
Absolutely. Sure. Stick around for a second, Kevin.
Sure.
All right, everyone. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. This was our conversation with Kevin Basham over at Cryptopulse Podcast. If you like the content, give us all a like and subscribe. We've got me over at JT Invest in You. We've got David with Crypto for Change. And we've got C. Will with the Passive Income Network. Give us all a subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
See you, everybody.